Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Country Living Homestead. Today I thought we would talk a little bit about gardening under the radar. What is it? How do you do it? And why would you want to do it? So stay tuned. So first things first, what the heck is gardening under the radar? Well, gardening under the radar is basically you're kind of gardening in secret. You're trying to be less obvious about having a garden. You don't want to attract a lot of attention to yourself. So that's basically what it is. Now, why would you want to do this? Well, there could be a number of reasons that you may be interested in trying something like this. You may live in a community that has an HOA, in which case I definitely do not encourage you to engage in any deceptive practices or violate any type of HOA agreements. Please do not violate your HOA's agreement, but there may be rules that allow you to plant certain things like herbs or ornamentals, and it may be okay to do that in your HOA without actually tearing up your yard and putting in a garden, so to speak. Another thing that you might want to consider is you may want to keep your garden away from prying eyes. You may not want your neighbors or everybody that drives by your house to know that you have a garden. I mean, sometimes people deal with theft in their gardens, and you know, this can eliminate that, or at least reduce the likelihood of people even realizing that you have a garden. So you may not have to worry so much about people taking your produce. Another benefit to this, well, actually two more benefits. One is it may confuse the wildlife. If I have, you know, 2 whole rows of cabbages planted right in my garden, the deer are definitely going to find those. They're going to eat my cabbage. However, if I have 2 cabbages in my flower bed and a couple more over in my landscaping and maybe one under my apple tree, they may not find it as quickly and easily. And if you do run into a problem where they eat some of them, they probably won't get them all. So it can help that way. It also may be able to help with pest reduction as far as insect pressure and things like that, because if I don't have all of my cabbages planted in the same spot, if I have them, some in my flower bed, some in my landscaping, some just dotted around my property, I may not have as many bugs that are going strictly for those cabbages. So that's another way it can help. Now, how can you go about doing this? Well, one of the biggest things is the layout. Whenever you lay out a traditional garden, you have your nice, perfect looking little rows. It's very obvious what you're doing there. It's really obvious that you have a garden. So layout is just as important as what you're going to plant. Now, what you plant also plays a big role. You can plant a lot of things that are going to just look like ornamentals, or they're going to look like vines, or a lot of things even grow flowers on them. So they may not be visibly obvious as to what they are. So that's another thing to keep in mind. Now, where are some good places to plant things if you're trying to garden under the radar? Well, number one, your flower beds. I mean, you can plant numerous things mixed right into your flower bed and nobody would be the wiser, especially herbs, for example. You could plant peas and have them growing up a little trellis. They also flower. So peas are a great addition to a flower bed. They blend right in. Most people won't even notice the pods hanging there. Another great thing to grow in like your flower bed or your landscaping is rhubarb. First of all, it's a perennial. It's going to come back year after year, which is a huge benefit on its own. But it also looks very ornamental. So it easily blends in with most landscaping, most flower beds, pretty much wherever you want to put it. Under a tree. I mean, even just, you know, if you're allowed to just plant something out in the middle of your yard, rhubarb looks very ornamental. Another great thing to put in landscaping are berry bushes, especially ones that stay on the smaller side. I mean, blueberry bushes, Blackberry bushes, they look very ornamental, even though they're providing a great food source. So that's something to think about. Sweet potatoes, that's another great thing to plant because the tubers are under the ground, so no one can see the vegetables. And if you put up a little trellis, they look absolutely beautiful. Growing up a trellis, they look almost like an ivy plant. So most people wouldn't be any the wiser about what you're actually growing there. And another one that's one of my personal favorites are chives. Chives, they grow into a big, you know, kind of bushy, beautiful landscaping plant, and they also produce some really beautiful purple flowers. So that's another one of my favorites. Now, aside from your flower beds and your landscaping, you can also grow in pots on your patio. You can have an absolutely amazing herb garden in pots on a patio, and nobody would be any the wiser. For example, basil is a beautiful herb. It flowers into purple flowers. Same with chives. There are so many herbs that are just stunning. I mean, mint, it smells amazing. So same with lemon balm, it smells great, it looks ornamental. So you could have an absolutely fantastic herb garden just right there on your patio, or even on a balcony as far as that goes. And if you don't have a lot of space on your patio or balcony, hanging planters can be a great thing. And some of the great things you can do with hanging planters, you can do cherry tomatoes in those, you can do strawberries in them. I actually have a couple that I keep in front of my greenhouse on shepherd hooks, and I keep 2 strawberry plants out there. They produce a lot more strawberries than you would think for just being in a little pot. So definitely something to keep in mind. Small pickling cucumbers would be something that you could put in hanging pots from your balcony or your patio. So any of those things would work great, and I'm sure there are even more that I'm not even thinking of right now. Now, another place that I am planning this year to plant some things is actually under some of my fruit trees. So I'm planning to do lettuce and spinach under my fruit trees for a couple of reasons. One, they're going to stay a little bit cooler there and be a little bit more shaded because of the fruit tree. But 2, it's also not going to be readily obvious what I have planted there. So, I mean, no one's just going to stroll by, you know, the house and realize that I have spinach and lettuce planted under my fruit trees. Most people wouldn't even be looking there for something. So that's another really good option. Now, depending on where you live, some HOAs may allow you to plant fruit trees. If that's an option for you, that's a really great source of food. And it's something that, you know, you might not really need to fly under the radar with. If you're allowed to plant like apple and pear trees, that's great. And you can get a ton of food from just one fruit tree once they're mature. So remember, the best time to plant a fruit tree was 5 years ago. So if that's something you're interested in and allowed to do, you better get cracking, especially with the way everything's going. Lastly, another really good thing to plant that looks very ornamental are grapevines. And some places don't mind you putting up a trellis and having, you know, a grapevine growing up. And it can also be a really great source of food. A grapevine can produce a lot of grapes, especially once they've matured. So definitely something to also keep in mind. So I really hope that everybody is going to get out there and start planting this year. Even if you can't plant a lot, if you can just plant a few of these things, hey, it's a start. It will give you experience. It will, you know, allow you to learn how to grow things. So definitely don't let it stop you if you know, have some of these challenges. So I thought I would do a quick little update on our chicks. They have been here for a week and 1 day. I have never used the heat lamp on them whatsoever. The only thing I've used to keep them warm is they're somewhat near my wood stove, not really close for safety purposes obviously, but near the wood stove, and they have one hot water bottle. And they've been doing great. As you can see, they're already starting to feather out. Most of them have their wing feathers, and a few of them are actually starting to get their little tail feathers now. We started out with 20 chicks. We still have 20 chicks. We haven't lost any. So we have been really happy with this batch of chicks and the way that everything's been turning out. These are breast chicks, in case you're wondering. They've been doing amazing. So that's our chick update. And thank you so much for stopping by the homestead today. I hope you have a great day.